Let's talk about commas. Now we use comma to separate elements in a series of three or more things. And commas, whenever we write something, there's always comma, and it's really important, and it's in everyday life. Comma is used to separate elements in a series of three or more things. Remember, it had to be at least three, not one, not two. Of course, elements can be many things. When we say that we use a comma to separate elements in a series of three or more things, we can be referring to a variety of things. Sometimes the elements are adjective, which are used to describe a noun. Or at other time, we should be describing action, which are the verbs, nouns, which are people, place, things, or idea, or other type of ideas. For example, Eve's backpack was eye-catching because it was a swirl of purple, red, and green. In this example, purple, red, and green are separated by commas because there are three adjectives in a series that describe Eve's backpack. John has taught that the proper way to catch a football is to see the ball, to make a triangle with the index finger and thumbs of his hand, and to observe football in a triangle in his body as the ball came in contact with his hands. As you see, we have two comma here, which are in red. So there are three actions that are listed in this series in this example. So they are separated by comma here and comma there. And to observe football, and then there's the word end. Or on this example, during our first trip to Washington, D.C., Nadia wanted to see the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Pentagon. Now, the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Pentagon are three nouns because they are places, and in the series, so they need to be separated by commas. But when we have a series of three or more elements, we place a comma between each element in a series, but of course not after the last item in the series. For example, the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Pentagon, and the Pentagon, It just doesn't make sense. Example, a comma after the Pentagon is incorrect because we do not need a comma after the last element in the series because the series just ends there. It doesn't start off anymore. So if we have a comma there, it's gonna be it's incorrect. So, but the correct example would be the White House, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Pentagon, and then it's just after that. Now, talking the comma out of the Pentagon is all we need to do. To correct the comma error. Now, remember that unless there are three or more elements in the series, we do not use comma to separate the elements. And if there are three or more elements in the series, we use comma, but we do not put the comma after the last element in the series. Now, a lot of people get mistaken for when they use comma, As you know, there must be three or more elements to use comma, or we would use, and if there's only two, we would use the word and. Now, there are some people just get mistake, like Ben had a donut, and coffee for breakfast before going to work. There are only two elements in the series, a donut and coffee, so there should not be a comma between them. There should only be the word and there, nothing else. So we should write it again with no comma here. Like Ben had a donut and coffee for breakfast before going to work. Again, simply removing the comma between the two items is all we need to do to fix the comma error. So remember this. When you make a list, use comma when you are listing 3 or more items. Now, do not use a comma when you're only listing 2 items. When you're listing 2 items, and when we add comma to the list of 3 or more items, we do not put the comma after the last elements in a series of things. So that's all about comma. It's really easy. You just need to understand. You just need to remember and understand the concept. You just need to remember that we only put comma in a list of 3 or more items, and we do not put comma in the end of we do not put comma after the last item in a series of things. Also, do not use comma when you are only using 2 items. So in this example, in this question, which answer used comma in a list correctly? Now, remember, we have to look for elements for sentences that have 3 or more elements. Use comma. So we have water, snacks, and blankets are noun because they're thing, and we only need to put two comma here because they're 3 things. So we only need to put a comma after water and after snacks. Now the first example here, they have a comma before water, which is after bring, but bring isn't in one of our list. It isn't in one of our. It isn't in our noun list, Bring is a verb, and of course bring is not like something that we would bring in a game, right? So the first choice of answer here would be wrong. Now the second is correct because they are written because they have comma after each of the noun, each of the series of thing, so it is correct. But the last one, they are correct, sort of. They have comma after water and before snacks, but they do not have comma after snacks. So this make it wrong. So the correct answer would be this. Which answer is okay? So same thing. Okay, the first choice is sort of correct. It's correct because you see we have the teacher assigned some homework, and they're reading, writing, and math homework. So that's 3 things in your list of series, in your series of item here. So remember, there's only 3 things like that. Never before that. So the first choice would be correct. But what about the second and third? Well, the second have comma after the teacher, and the teacher, which mean the teacher assigned reading and writing here are in a list of series, but they do not belong in one, because as you know, the teacher assigned something, and then we have reading, writing, and math homework. Only that. They do not list out people, so we cannot have the teacher in a list, and we do not have any verbs, so assign cannot be in a list. So the second choice would be incorrect. But what about the third choice? Well, the third choice don't even have any comma, which it doesn't help separate it, and all of them just all stick together, so it doesn't quite make sense. So the first choice would be correct. Okay, which answer used comma in a list correctly? She packed her book, clothes, and shoes for the trip. Okay, the first choice is, now as you know, we have to see which one would belong in our list of item here. A series of item here. Books, clothes, and shoes. 3 things. They're both nouns, and there's something that she would pack for the trip, But her is herself. She won't be packing herself for the trip. Of course, she's also noun, but it doesn't belong in this thing. It's book, clothes, or shoes are also noun, but they are things, noun. But her here are also noun, but they are people, noun. So it's just didn't quite belong here. So the first choice would be incorrect. The second is correct because book, clothes, and shoes have comma here, and they doesn't have comma after the last item in a list in the series, and they just use comma correctly. They doesn't have any mistake at all. The last one here, they only have one comma, which is to separate book, clothes, and the shoes. Now, book and clothes are two different things, definitely two different things. So, and they doesn't belong together. So, book and clothes. The third choice is incorrect because we need to have a comma in between book and clothes to separate two things because they are not made of one word stick together. So the correct choice here would be the second choice. Thank you for coming and have a great day.